Few teams have ever frightened the football world the way Brazil once did. A yellow shirt alone could change the atmosphere inside a stadium. Opponents prepared for Brazil with tactics. Supporters prepared for Brazil with expectation. Generation after generation, the game seemed to belong to them. Pelé turned football into a global spectacle. Zico inspired a generation, despite never lifting the World Cup. Romário restored Brazil's crown in the United States. Ronaldo completed one of football's greatest comebacks in Yokohama. Ronaldinho made impossible football look effortless. 5 stars appeared above the Brazilian badge. No nation had ever collected more World Cups. Then something changed. Not all at once. Not after a single defeat. Almost too slowly for the football world to notice. The trophies disappeared. The fear disappeared. Then, little by little, the identity began to disappear. Since lifting the World Cup in 2002, Brazil has continued producing extraordinary footballers. Yet the country's greatest prize has remained painfully out of reach. Managers have changed. Generations have changed. Styles have changed. The result has not. So what happened to the most successful football nation in history? Why did the country that taught the world how to play beautiful football suddenly stop standing on football's biggest stage? The answer begins long before the famous defeats everyone remembers. Because Brazil did not lose the World Cup overnight. Something much deeper had already begun to fade. Brazil's greatest export was never coffee. It was imagination with a football. Children chased worn-out balls across beaches. Teenagers dribbled through narrow streets where every mistake bounced off a wall. Improvisation became a daily habit long before it became a football philosophy. Europe admired structure. Brazil celebrated expression. The world eventually gave that expression a name: Jogo Bonito. The beautiful game was never just about tricks. It was confidence without fear. It was creativity without permission. It was believing that entertainment and victory could exist together. That belief produced more than great players. It produced unforgettable moments. Pelé smiled while lifting the Jules Rimet trophy. Carlos Alberto finished one of football's greatest team goals in 1970. Socrates played with elegance that reflected both intelligence and freedom. Romário waited patiently before striking with ruthless precision. Ronaldo accelerated past defenders who already knew they were beaten. Ronaldinho laughed in the middle of impossible passes. Each generation looked different. Yet they all shared the same football language. Brazil did not simply win. Brazil convinced the world that football could become art. That reputation became both a gift and a burden, because every masterpiece creates expectations that become almost impossible to satisfy. Football never stopped evolving. The rest of the world learned from Brazil. Then the rest of the world started catching up. European clubs became wealthier. Sports science transformed training grounds. Data analysis entered dressing rooms. Pressing became an organized weapon. Defensive structures became more compact. The spaces that once belonged to artists slowly disappeared. Brazil adapted. But every adaptation came with a question. How much can you change before you stop being yourself? More Brazilian teenagers left home earlier than ever before. European academies finished the education that Brazilian streets had once begun. The players became more disciplined. They also became more alike. Technique survived. Instinct slowly faded. The yellow shirt still carried history. But history alone could not win modern tournaments. Then came the tournament that convinced millions everything was still fine. Brazil arrived in Asia in 2002 with questions. They left with the World Cup. The celebrations were unforgettable. So was the illusion they created. Because beneath the confetti, the foundations had already begun to shift. The fifth star looked like the end of a glorious journey. In reality, it was the beginning of football's longest unanswered question. History remembers champions. History often forgets the questions they leave behind. Brazil's victory in 2002 looked complete. 8 matches ended without defeat. Ronaldo scored 8 goals. Rivaldo delivered when Brazil needed him most. Ronaldinho announced himself to the world. The 3 forwards became one of football's most unforgettable attacks. Millions celebrated a perfect ending. Few noticed it was also the end of an era. That squad was built around extraordinary individuals. Many of them had developed before football's new reality fully arrived. They carried the instincts of Brazilian streets, while adapting to Europe's growing tactical demands. It was a rare balance, one that proved far more difficult to reproduce. Within a few years, football accelerated again. European clubs invested more heavily than ever before. Young Brazilian talents crossed the Atlantic at increasingly younger ages. Their development became shaped by different priorities. Decision-making replaced improvisation. Structure challenged spontaneity. Efficiency slowly defeated romance. None of those changes looked dangerous on their own. Together, they quietly reshaped an entire football culture. The first signs appeared not in Brazil's victories, but in the defeats that followed. The defending champions arrived in Germany in 2006, carrying more than a trophy. They carried an aura that few national teams had ever possessed. Ronaldinho had just been crowned the world's best player. Ronaldo remained football's greatest World Cup goalscorer. Kaká represented the future. Adriano was one of Europe's most feared strikers. The squad looked less like a national team and more like a collection of global superstars. Many expected Brazil to defend the World Cup with style. Instead, something felt different from the opening matches. The football remained technically brilliant. The rhythm no longer belonged entirely to Brazil. Opponents pressed higher. Midfields closed space faster. Transitions became more organized. The moments that once allowed Brazilian genius to flourish became increasingly rare. The warning became impossible to ignore in the quarterfinal. France did not simply defeat Brazil. France controlled the match. Zinedine Zidane dictated the tempo with extraordinary composure. Brazil spent long periods reacting instead of creating. Thierry Henry's winning goal completed more than an upset. It marked the end of an illusion. For the first time in decades, the world's greatest football nation looked one step behind the game's evolution. Most supporters called it an underachievement. History would remember it as an early warning. The response to that warning would change Brazil more than the defeat itself. After Germany 2006, Brazil searched for answers. The questions reached far beyond one tournament. Had beautiful football become outdated? Could flair alone still conquer the modern World Cup? The federation turned to Dunga. His appointment symbolized a philosophical shift. Discipline moved closer to the center of Brazil's identity. Collective organization became the priority. Pragmatism replaced spectacle whenever the two came into conflict. The transformation produced results. Brazil won the 2007 Copa America. Brazil claimed the 2009 FIFA Confederations Cup. The team entered the 2010 World Cup with confidence. Yet something felt unfamiliar. Brazil still won matches. Brazil no longer inspired the same sense of wonder. The yellow shirt looked efficient. It looked disciplined. It no longer looked unmistakably Brazilian. The quarterfinal against the Netherlands became the defining test. Brazil controlled the first half and deservedly took the lead. Then the match slowly slipped away. A defensive misunderstanding handed the Netherlands an equalizer. Momentum changed almost instantly. Wesley Sneijder scored again. Felipe Melo's red card reflected the team's growing frustration. Brazil left South Africa earlier than expected. The defeat raised an uncomfortable possibility. Perhaps Brazil had sacrificed part of its football identity, without becoming better than the teams it was trying to imitate. The search for balance would now return to Brazilian soil, and with it came expectations unlike anything the modern generation had ever experienced. The 2014 FIFA World Cup returned to the country that had taught generations how football could be beautiful. For millions of Brazilians, hosting the tournament felt like history offering a second chance. The memory of the 1950 defeat to Uruguay still lingered across generations. Winning at home promised more than another trophy. It promised redemption. Under Luis Felipe Scolari, Brazil reached the semifinals with determination rather than brilliance. The team defended with commitment. They relied heavily on moments of individual inspiration. Neymar carried much of the creative responsibility. Thiago Silva provided calm whenever pressure rose. Then, everything changed within a matter of days. Neymar suffered a fractured vertebra against Colombia. Thiago Silva received a suspension for the semi-final. The nation worried. Few imagined what would follow. Germany entered the Mineirão with a clear tactical identity. Brazil entered, carrying the emotional weight of an entire nation. One burden proved far heavier than the other. The opening goal unsettled Brazil. The next 4 goals shattered every remaining certainty. The scoreboard became almost impossible to process. The silence inside the stadium spoke louder than any commentary. Children cried with faces hidden behind yellow shirts. Parents stared at the pitch, searching for answers. Players looked at one another without understanding how the match had escaped them. Germany did not simply exploit defensive mistakes. They exposed a team that had lost its emotional structure. The technical errors were visible. The psychological collapse was even greater. By the final whistle, the score read 7-1. The number entered football history immediately. Yet the score alone never explained why the night felt so devastating. Brazil had lost football matches before. This time, millions felt they had watched an image of Brazil itself fall apart. The world remembered the 7 goals. Brazil remembered the silence that followed them. Some defeats end when the referee blows the final whistle. Brazil's most painful defeat had only just begun. The rebuilding began almost immediately. Brazil could not erase the memory of 7-1. They could only decide what to learn from it. In 2016, Tite accepted one of football's most demanding jobs. He inherited more than a talented squad. He inherited a nation searching for belief. Results improved quickly. Brazil climbed the South American qualifiers with authority. The team defended with greater discipline. The attack recovered its rhythm. Neymar once again became the face of Brazilian football. Philippe Coutinho flourished as a creative force. Marcelo, Casemiro, Thiago Silva, and Alisson formed the backbone of an experienced side. For the first time since 2002, many supporters believed Brazil had found the right balance. Structure no longer suffocated creativity. Creativity no longer ignored structure. Russia 2018 felt different. Brazil navigated the group stage with growing confidence. A convincing victory over Mexico in the round of 16 reinforced their status as one of the tournament favorites. Then came Belgium. The scoreline read 2-1. The performance told a more complicated story. Belgium punished nearly every decisive moment. Brazil created chances but failed to convert enough of them. Thibaut Courtois produced one of the finest goalkeeping performances of the tournament. The margins were painfully small. Unlike 2014, Brazil did not collapse. Unlike 2006, Brazil did not look outdated. They simply fell short against another elite team. The defeat hurt. It also suggested that Brazil's journey back had begun. The next generation would inherit more than expectation. They would inherit unfinished business. The years after Russia brought fresh reasons for optimism. Brazil lifted the Copa America in 2019 on home soil. A new generation continued to mature in Europe's biggest leagues. Vinicius Jr. became one of the world's most explosive wingers. Rodrigo developed into a decisive attacking threat. Casemiro remained one of football's premier defensive midfielders. Alisson consistently ranked among the world's finest goalkeepers. Richarlison added energy and goals. Neymar entered another World Cup, determined to complete his international legacy. By the time Qatar 2022 arrived, many analysts considered Brazil one of the strongest squads in the competition. The balance looked convincing. The depth looked exceptional. The football looked unmistakably confident again. Brazil defeated South Korea with a dazzling display in the round of 16. The old joy briefly returned. Then Croatia slowed the match to its own rhythm. Neymar broke the deadlock in extra time with a moment of individual brilliance. Qualification seemed only minutes away. Yet a single Croatian counterattack changed everything. The match drifted into a penalty shootout. Croatia held its nerve. Brazil did not. The images looked painfully familiar. Players collapsed onto the pitch. Supporters stood in silence. Another World Cup had ended earlier than Brazil expected. This defeat felt different from 2014. Brazil had not been overwhelmed. Brazil had been undone by the smallest margins. That distinction mattered. It showed how far Brazil had come since the trauma of Belo Horizonte. It also showed how difficult the final step remained. The sixth star was no longer blocked by a lack of talent. It was blocked by football's finest details. Game management, decision-making under pressure, collective maturity in decisive moments. Those qualities separate contenders from champions. Brazil's search was no longer about producing the next Pelé or the next Neymar. It was about discovering the next great Brazilian team. Perhaps the greatest question was never whether Brazil still had world-class players, but whether it could once again build a World Cup winning identity from them. 5 World Cups have passed since Brazil lifted the trophy in Yokohama. Each tournament ended differently. Germany 2006 exposed complacency. South Africa 2010 questioned a change in philosophy. Brazil 2014 shattered a nation's confidence. Russia 2018 restored belief, but not the result. Qatar 2022 proved that talent alone was still not enough. Viewed separately, they look like unrelated disappointments. Viewed together, they tell a single story. Brazil never stopped producing extraordinary footballers. The academies never stopped discovering gifted children. European clubs never stopped recruiting Brazilian talent. The yellow shirt never stopped carrying expectation. What slowly became harder was transforming individual brilliance into a team capable of surviving football's finest margins. Modern World Cups are rarely won by talent alone. They reward tactical clarity, collective discipline, emotional control, relentless consistency. Brazil has possessed all of those qualities at different moments. The challenge has been bringing them together when history demanded it most. That challenge belongs to Brazil. Its origins belong to football itself. The greatest football revolution rarely announces itself. It spreads quietly. For decades, nations tried to understand why Brazil played with such freedom. Coaches studied Brazilian technique. Academies encouraged greater creativity. Players grew more comfortable on the ball. At the same time, tactical organization continued to evolve. The strongest teams learned to combine imagination with structure. Football became faster, more compact, more demanding. The distance between traditional football cultures narrowed. In many ways, the world learned from Brazil. Then Brazil faced a new reality. Standing out became far more difficult when everyone had adopted part of your language. The challenge was no longer teaching the world how to play beautiful football. It was discovering what Brazilian football should become next. Not a copy of Europe, not a prisoner of nostalgia, but a new expression of the same footballing spirit. Because identity is never preserved by standing still. It survives by evolving without forgetting where it began. World Cups measure success. They do not measure influence. Long before children learned tactical systems, many first fell in love with football by trying to play like Brazil. They copied Pelé's imagination. They admired Zico's elegance. They celebrated Romario's confidence. They gasped at Ronaldo's acceleration. They smiled at Ronaldinho's joy. Even today, young players around the world still search for moments of freedom with the ball. That desire is part of Brazil's gift to football. The sixth star remains unwon. The legacy of the first five remains untouched. No tournament can erase the ideas that changed the sport itself. Because trophies belong to generations. Ideas belong to history. And history is still writing Brazil's next chapter. Perhaps Brazil never truly stopped producing champions. Perhaps it simply entered an era where every champion had learned something from Brazil. The search for a sixth World Cup continues. So does the search for the next great Brazilian team. No one knows when those journeys will end. What history already knows is something else. Very few nations have changed the way football is played. Even fewer have changed the way football is imagined. Brazil achieved both. That is why every World Cup without a trophy feels like more than a sporting defeat. It feels like a question waiting for an answer. Not because Brazil owes the world another title, but because the world still wonders what the next chapter of Brazilian football will look like. The 5 stars above the shirt tell the story of what Brazil once achieved. The search for the 6th tells the story that is still being written. And perhaps that has always been Brazil's greatest legacy. Not that it won the World Cup more than anyone else, but that it made the world believe football could be more than a game. It could be art. And every generation that wears the yellow shirt still carries the responsibility of proving that idea true once again.